Hello and welcome to yet another session of NextGen 2024. My name is Neil and I'm from the customer success team here at FlytBase. Before we get started, please let me know how are things going on with you today. Are you liking the NextGen sessions that we are hosting? Please drop your comments, your experiences in the chat box. And if you want, you can also go ahead and show your appreciation and love for the event at the NextGen Wall of Love. All of this will help us curate the right kind of sessions for the NextGen editions coming forward. So ladies and gentlemen, let's begin. Whether you're dipping your toes in the world of autonomous drone operations or fine-tuning your skills as a seasoned remote operator, one thing that remains constant is airspace awareness. In the age of autonomous drone ops, where drone flights take off day and night, instant situational awareness is not just a luxury, but a necessity. You need situational awareness and practical insights to make swift decisions that are crucial for the safety of your teams and general public. And this is what we are going to cover in today's session. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our speakers. So first, I'd like to introduce Dan O'Shea, who is the Global Sales Manager for Commercial and Public Sector Scales at Matrix Space Radars. Dan is a global sales executive in the aerospace and the commercial UAS industry, specializing in radars, computer vision, AI, machine learning, IoT, and edge computing. With a strong background in SaaS and HaaS sales models, Dan has developed global sales strategies that have resulted in significant pipeline and revenue growth. Over the course of his career, he has owned the entire sales cycles and closed business with multiple Fortune 500 companies, defense primes, and enterprise organizations. And also, in his free time, Dan happily annoys his wife and his young son with his guitar and is deeply involved in building up the Boston water polo community as both a player and a referee. So welcome, Dan. Happy to have you on the session.
Thanks. Great to be here.
And looking forward to it. I want to now introduce our next speaker, David Cameron. So he's a field services engineer and lead UAS pilot at Matrix Space. David brings over 3 decades of experience in law enforcement and has had a great tenure at the Campbell Police Department. His diverse roles included SWAT, financial crimes investigation, and pioneering the drone piloting program. He's also notably established the department's UAS program and secured an FAA beyond visual line of sight waiver, culminating in the launch of one of the nation's few drone first responder programs. Since joining Matrix Space in 2023, David has been instrumental in addressing complex security challenges for a varied clientele, blending his extensive law enforcement background with a cutting-edge deep technology. So welcome, David. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. So before I proceed ahead, I just have to walk you through a few housekeeping rules. So let's keep this entire session a little engaging. We are going to, we have a chat section. So if you have any specific questions with respect to what we are going to tell you here, please feel free to drop your insights into that. The session is also getting recorded, as a lot of our audience is already asking. Don't worry, we'll have these sessions for you. And please also do visit the booth section of Matrix Space. So their team is going to be there. If you want to network with them, get to know a little more about their offerings, they'll be there and waiting for you. And please show us some love and appreciation about NextGen as well. So tell us what you like, what you don't. Use the hashtag NextGen on LinkedIn, Twitter. And we also have a special surprise for the top 3 posts that go live on social media. And last but not the least, I just want to take some time to thank our title sponsor, which is DJI Enterprise, and our gold sponsor, Sunflower Labs, for showing their invaluable support for NextGen 24. And with that, Dan and David, I hand it over to you. The floor is all yours.
Sweet. Thank you, Neil. Really, really appreciate it. And of course, thank you to the entire FlytBase team for putting this on and for inviting David and myself to talk. So we're excited about this. So, hi, everybody. So, yeah, before we kind of jump off here, just a little disclaimer right up front. Um, as if you couldn't tell, David and I are American, right? So that means that we have a particularly American lens that we're probably going to be relying on throughout the course of the presentation. But the one thing that I want to say is that the things that we're talking about here, yeah, we may reference particular FAA rule sets or particular US legal codes or things like that, but all of the strategies and the practicalities that we're talking about absolutely apply to any country, particularly if you're in a country that utilizes the SORA risk assessment methodology. So with that out of the way, this is applicable to everybody here on the call that is interested in learning how to safely utilize detect and avoid technology to create airspace deconfliction. So that being said, got to switch screens here. So really quickly about myself. So thank you, Neil, again for the really great introduction. The only thing that I'll really add to it is that, for the past 5 years of my career, I've been working very deep in the detect and avoid space, enabling BV loss programs. I've helped customers get a number of true BV loss waivers. So in other words, replacing their ground-based visual observers, human visual observers with detect and avoid technology. And we'll be talking particularly a lot today about drone as first responder programs. And so I'm happy to say that I was part of the team that helped Pearland PD out in Texas get their first true BV loss approval, which was the first one for any police agency in the United States. So I'm thrilled to be talking with you about kind of the strategies that we utilize that help Pearland, as well as a number of our enterprise customers go fully beyond visual line of sight with no human visual observers. So with that out of the way, thank you guys. David, off to you.
Great. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us. Neil, great introduction. I appreciate it. Really, the only thing I have to add to that is I still am currently in the position of a reserve police officer with my city and still managing the drone program and DFR program with the city. So let me tell you just a short snippet about what we do at Matrix Space to help enable BVLOS operations. And we've developed this cell phone-sized low-power radar source to help enable BVLOS programs, among other use cases. So I know this is not really supposed to be a pitch, and we're not really going to do that, so I'm going to leave it at that. But we are enabling with radar, along with other industry partners, to enable BVLOS operations around the nation. So Campbell. So what we're doing at Campbell, we've had a DFR program started since early 2023. We've had our UAS program up and running since 2018. And we've been doing the quote unquote traditional DFR program, which is that Chula Vista founded program, visual observer on the roof, teleoperator in a control station. And what we're doing now is we're trying to go to that, DFR 2.0, and, I'll credit Anders Martin from Norway UAS on that coining of the term DFR 2.0, which is taking sensors like optical and radar sensors, and we're working with partners right now to install those in Campbell. And we're working on a concept of operation to submit to the FAA, which will be a no VO waiver. So we're looking to use this digital visual observer technology, which combines optical, radar, and live ADS-BN. And we're also considering adding in micro leather detection capabilities into the node. And we're approaching that very quick. We're doing installations right now of our drone in the box technology, and we should be up and running with our nodes here pretty soon under the traditional program, as we wait to see what the FAA is going to say about our concept of operation. Next slide there, Dan. So, really, for those who don't know what DFR is, it stands for Drone as First Responder. And really, that program for the public is, I'm sorry, the DFR aims to really augment and enhance the safety of public and first responders by remotely deploying drones with the various different sensors with a goal of arriving on scene before ground units and give that critical pre-arrival information. It's not really readily available to ground units. Other things that we are using the DFR program for is a force multiplier. They can respond to non-emergent calls that may not require a ground unit to respond at all. There are several non-emergent calls that are checking an area for certain things that we can have the drone go out first, check the area, and if that incident has cleared itself up, then we don't even have to respond ground units to the scene, leaving them or freeing them up to conduct other proactive activity or finish report writing. We're here in the United States, we have a large shortage of qualified candidates who want to be police officers. And a lot of departments are looking and agencies are looking at augmenting their abilities with technology to try to become a force multiplier with technology. And this is just one of the ways we're doing that. Dan, I think back to you for visual observer stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got a case study here for you real quick. So just recently, one of our drone pilots was out operating. We had a report of a missing elderly person with Alzheimer's. It was during night and it was down in the 40s. That's the Fahrenheit, the American units of, and that's pretty cold for us here in California in the 40s. And it was only about 3 blocks away from where the person had walked away. He was located in a long driveway, laying down on the ground in front of a parked vehicle in somebody's driveway. They would not have found him normally walking around because you couldn't see him from the roadway, but he was able to locate him within just a few minutes of deploying the drone using the thermal sensor and picking out and finding the elderly subject who had walked away, and then just guided in our ground units. And we call that a big save. I mean, had we not located him, yeah, he could have in that environment definitely caused him some harm, if not death. So I think that was a big win for drones and just first responder use of drones. Now I think back to you, Dan.
Yeah, so I think you guys are, I think, we're preaching to the choir in a lot of ways. I think everybody here kind of understands that, the need for, a real scalable solution. And you think about, that particular use case, well, how much better would it be if we weren't reliant on having people on rooftops so that the city of Campbell could expand their operations and could fly whenever they need to? They're not, hampered by someone that might call out sick and now can't play that visual observer role. So that's really what we're talking about. And hopefully with the rest of this presentation, you guys have a good understanding of how to go about presenting your safety case and then understanding some of the challenges that come with setting up these systems. Before that, though, we got a poll. So please drop your answers in the chat. But what do you think is the biggest challenge for implementing digital VOs? Is it cost, regulatory compliance, scalability, integration with other drone platforms, or something else entirely? So we'd love to see your answers. And if we have enough time, we'll make sure to address some of them at the end of the presentation. So let's talk about actually how to transition into digital visual observers. So again, this is relevant ultimately to whatever country you might be in, particularly those that follow SORA or some sort of SORA adjacent methodology, like here in the US, Canada to a lesser extent. But anyways, what are we really worried about here? Why do we need this? Why can't we just go towards full electronic conspicuity, have ADS-B in and out? And well, the answer is because of this non-cooperative traffic. Non-cooperative traffic laws will vary depending on the country, but quite simply, it is an aircraft that is not broadcasting its location through some type of electronic means, right? Now, this does not mean that they are illegally flying. Again, different jurisdictions may vary, but here in the United States, for instance, if you're in Class Gulf airspace, you don't need it. And there's a ton of Class Gulf airspace in the United States. We're a geographically huge nation. So it means that you can have quite a few aircraft flying around at any given time that are not broadcasting their location. And, even though we hope that, people are flying legally and broadcasting their location when they're supposed to be within certain types of airspace, it's not always the case. Sometimes we're talking about non-equipped rates as high as 11% with inside mandatory equipped zones. And generally speaking, at about 15% of the time, any given aircraft in the United States outside of ADS mandate range is not broadcasting their location. So this is a pretty significant problem that regulators are very much aware of. Again, numbers are going to vary depending on your jurisdiction, country, all that stuff, but it's a pretty big problem, and nobody wants to see a drone take down a plane. So this is what the real threat here and why we need that type of airspace awareness. Now, humans aren't great at this. We're just not. We get bored, tired, we get sick, we get distracted. It can be cold, it can be hot. And, depending on the actual environment too, there could be factors that limit the actual, even if you're 100% on, you're well caffeinated, you're ready to go, it could be hazy. It could be a smoggy day. And you might not be able to see as far, or you might have things like birds in the way that are obscuring where an object might be. So it becomes tough. In case in point, and David's got a little bit to say about this, but I'm going to show two images from a study that was published a few years back, I think in 2016, that really shows how difficult it is for humans, even when they're doing their job correctly, to differentiate between the distance between, say, an intruder drone, the own ship, and an intruder aircraft. Ready for this? So in both these pictures, the drone is at 400 feet AGL and the plane is at 600 feet AGL. I'll let this sit in a little bit because on that picture on the right, it looks like they're about to collide, right? David, you've done a lot implementing VO training, so off to you for some color commentary.
Yeah, let me talk about that a little bit. So, I think one thing that has been neglected in the drone space has been the human factor. Whether it's the RPIC working by themselves and they're trying to watch the drone and watch the screen, or even if they have dedicated VOs, the human factor has, I think studies in human factors and related directly to drone use and visual observers for drone use, I think have been neglected. There have been a few studies generally on human factors, but I fall back on, I was an accident reconstructionist with my police department. And there's a lot of studies in collision reconstruction that relate to the human factor, the perception reaction times and what the brain needs to discern or see an object. And back through my days of human factor training, we came across, from credit to Jeff Moutard of the Driver Research Institute, an acronym called CLIPS, and it stands for contrast, lighting, pattern, and size. And really what that is, the object that you're looking at, does it have enough contrast from the background for you to even see it? Is there the proper lighting for you to see it? Is it a pattern that you recognize? And then the size of the object, how far away it is, or the physical size of the object has a lot to do with how the brain determines what they're looking at. And I'll go back to my first drone that we got at Campbell Police Department was that DJI Phantom that was the really cool color. It was the onyx color. It was that gray one. And then the first day that I put it up on a nice overcast, cloudy day, I just looked at it and I was like, I don't even know where it is. It was not contrasting enough to its background. And that can happen even in low altitude operations. If you've got a darker drone that you're flying below tree level within visual line of sight, you can easily lose it because there's not enough contrast between the background. So
right,
this surge towards this visual observer, I think is going to be a big step forward in safety, because currently the visual observers are just not, I think, a human eyeball, the wet eyeball technique, I don't think has been the safest and hasn't been studied enough. I think the digital visual observer is going to be that next big step, and we're hoping to make that happen pretty soon.
Thanks. All right. So what is a digital visual observer? So we're basically, it's another parlance, and credit to the guys at Flying Lion for coming up with that particular term. But it's a detect and avoid system. And it could be ground-based, it could be airborne, it could be a radar, it could be an electro-optical system, it could be an acoustic system. Doesn't really matter. Ultimately, however you're going to incorporate these things into your ConOps is going to look fundamentally the same way. But that's really what we're talking about here, our DAA systems. And the real thing to consider, and David and I have the benefit of talking with all sorts of different organizations, different end users, agencies, police departments, etc. But the thing to remember is you're not going to incorporate these things the same way that you would a human visual observer into your ConOps. Okay, well, how do we go about doing that? I wanted to call out this particular chart. My colleague Akaki, who's speaking on a panel a little bit later today, did this as part of a blog post, but it's one of the better describers of how to think about the different types of volumes or different types of surveillance volumes. So when you put out something like a radar system, you've got essentially your surveillance volume. In other words, how far can the radar see out, right? And then within that, you've got a smaller volume, the declaration volume. So what is that? That's where you're getting about 50% of your tracks. Radar parlance, but we'll say detections, right? That's where your 50% threshold is. And then within that, you've got your operational volume. And that's the area that you can safely fly your aircraft. So what does that mean? Okay, it means that you have to have a buffer, right? There is a time buffer that needs to be considered. So putting out one radar panel that sees, say, 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, doesn't mean that you can fly 5, 10, 20 kilometers. It means that you can only fly a fraction of that because you need enough room to get out of the way of an aircraft that comes in. Now, when we structure these different ConOps, you can figure this out. RTCA, the international standards body, has created a set of equations. We've built our own internal calculator to help try to understand the different major variables that impact how large your ultimate operational volume can be. Some of these variables, how are you actually getting out of the way? Is it automated? Is it human initiated? Are you actually manually flying the drone? How maneuverable is that drone? How high up are you flying and how far down do you need to descend? All of these things have different impacts on how big the area that you can operate in. And with the complex equations put out by RTCA and DO 381, you can kind of figure out, okay, well, how much time do I actually have to get out of the way, and how much room do I have to fly? Here's what this looks like in real life. This is a mock-up that we did for a potential customer. You can see the large yellow or the kind of semi-translucent yellow outlines. That's our surveillance volume. Or our declaration volume, rather, excuse me. The distance and the distance to that and the hexagons in the center here, the blue hexagons, that is our buffer space. And the blue hexagons and the dark yellow in the center are the operational volume. In other words, where you can fly safely knowing that you have enough time to deconflict. David, really quickly over to you, because I think we've got about 5 minutes left, and we should definitely leave some time for Q&A. How are you going about implementing your DAA systems in Campbell?
So right now we're lucky enough to have a 366-foot business tower within our city, and we are currently in the midst of installing both a digital optical system, an optical system and a radar system. The optical system is from Dedrone, the radar system is from MatrixSpace, along with a live ADS-B our goal is, and then also installing our docks. Our goal is to get to this single person flight system using digital visual observer. Now, I've been working with a partner, Brandon Carr from Pearland, Texas, in writing our ConOp that we are very soon going to be submitting to the FAA with our concept of operations, hoping to get that approved with digital visual observers and having it as a no VO system. So that's where we're at right now. Dan, I mean, these are the system. This is an example of the systems that we are installing on that tower in some form or fashion, and then trying to get it all into one pane of glass. So we've integrated with our partners, and we're trying to put all the information along with audio detection, yeah, and the radar and optical detection all into one pane of glass.
Yeah, so some final thoughts here before we wrap up. So, guys, there's a lot to remember with this. And so it's a good idea to find a company or a partner that has experience in doing true BV loss and to work with them if you're unfamiliar with it. Love for it to be us, but there are a lot of good providers out there. There are a lot of smart people. And of course, we do not have a particular monopoly on the BV loss, on the BV loss marketplace, right? But it's doable. Just make sure that you're deliberate, you're evaluating your infrastructure requirements. In David's case, he's incorporating several different types of DAA systems to cover his particular airspace. And so make sure that you're evaluating that closely, and, be deliberate and engage your regulators early. Work with them, because in a lot of cases, in a lot of countries, they're still learning how they want to actually regulate this process. Some countries are further along than others, but engagement with your regulator, learning how they think something's going to be safe, and having that good cross dialogue with them is going to be to your benefit. And of course, it doesn't hurt to start with visual observers either, just to build your reputation with those regulators. So be thoughtful, be deliberate, and engage early with regulators and partners that can scale you for success. Okay. With that, thank you all so much. Really, really appreciate it. Please feel free to connect with David or myself on LinkedIn. Feel free to check out the booth afterwards. And I think with that, I think we're going to leave what time left for Q&A.
Yeah, sure, and David, thank you so much for walking us through this. I'm sure the audience learned a lot. I learned a lot about airspace awareness, so thank you for sharing your insights. We do have a couple of questions, so I'll just get that in. Right, so we have a question: how soon can I purchase a unit if that's readily available?
We're shipping now. If that's something you're interested in, please connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be happy to talk you through the purchasing process.
All right, we have one more question. So I think this would go for David. David, you mentioned something about DFR 2.0. So can you just help us understand what does it constitute?
Yeah. So again, that term was not coined by me. That was Anders Martin and Norway UAS. DFR 2.0 is the next evolution of DFR. So that's going to the visual, using a digital visual observer instead of a human visual observer to monitor airspace. So that's that DFR 2.0, really trying to turn the operation into a one-person operation, teleoperator only, who uses the fused digital visual observer systems to monitor the airspace for crewed aircraft and launch and recover drones and conduct operations. So that's the DFR 2.0. So it's the next evolution.
All right. So we have one more question for the audience, from the audience. So in context of BVLOS operations, what are the key features that a radar system should have, from an architectural point of view or a tech stack point of view?
Yeah, so I can take this. So it depends a little bit on the radar system that you're using, right? So ultimately the range of the radar system is going to dictate how many radar systems that you need in a particular area. So if you are, dropping the cash and have the power capabilities to support a radar system that can see 10, 20 miles, then great, then you only need one of those, right? But if you those are big, expensive, and power hungry. So if you need to distribute smaller ones, of course, you got to find places to physically put them that will allow you to do that with a clear line of sight. Somewhere that has power, somewhere that has network capability. So, to really kind of think about, and this is true too for any of the other kind of more tactically designed DAA systems, some of the more popular electronic or electro-optical systems, or acoustic systems. You may have to set up multiple to cover a large area, particularly if you're covering like something the size of a city. So making sure that you have something to elevate your DAA system to maintain clear of line of sight, like a pole or a mast, top of a building, things like those types of considerations come into play.
All right, got it. Thanks, Dan. I think we also had a poll, so let me just quickly show the results so that we can get some insights on that. So the question was, what do you think is the biggest challenge for implementing digital VOs? 10% of the audience says it's cost, 65% says it's regulatory compliance, and 25% say that it's scalability. Any thoughts on that, Dan or David?
Yeah, I think cost is scaled in different aspects. So like for an agency, it's not just the cost of the equipment, it's cost of manpower. It's running a current DFR system. We have to look at the overtime or regular time to have a human visual observer on the roof, who also has benefits and healthcare and everything, plus their salary. Or if they're on overtime, what does that cost? Versus the upfront cost of hardware that down the road will save you the money on the cost part. So I think that's probably the number one is cost, which is can be cost prohibitive, but you need to really structure and investigate how much it's going to cost for a human versus a digital VO that can work in all weather. It doesn't matter whether it's cold outside. If it's really cold, I don't want to put my human VO outside on a rooftop somewhere, but my digital VO can power through it and do what it needs to do, and you can continue operations. So the cost savings down the road is where it comes.
All right, David, thanks for sharing your insights on that. We are a little over time, so sadly it's time to say goodbye, but thanks again, David and Dan, for coming and being on the session, sharing your insights. Thanks for taking the time to attend this session, and this goes for our audience as well. The Matrix Space booth is in the expo section, so that happens to be on your left. Their team is going to be there from 12 to 1 p.m. ET. Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct.
Yeah. So you can head over to the expo section, speak to their team, get to know a little more about their offerings. And yeah, that's it. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, David, for coming here and sharing your insights. Really appreciate your time. And it's good to see what you're doing. Like I said, airspace awareness is the need of the hour. It's helping us save a lot of time and effort, and eventually leading us mitigating risks, right? That's what we need to ensure, from a flight safety point of view. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, audience. Have a great day.
You too. Have a great day.
Take care now.